Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The warship so powerful, the galaxy erased it from history. Marcus Bell had never been one to believe in conspiracy theories. As a historian specializing in military conflicts, he trusted documents, dates, and verifiable facts, but the file on his desk made no sense at all. The small office at the University of New Terra was quiet, except for the soft hum of the air system outside his window. The twin moons hung in the purple sky. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes and looked again at the battle report from the Galactic War of 2312. Something was wrong with the numbers. The 7th Fleet engaged Dominion forces at Proxima Centauri, he read aloud. Human casualties, 1,200. Dominion casualties estimated, 45,000. Marcus frowned. How could a human fleet suffer so few losses against such a powerful enemy? The Dominion had better ships and weapons at that point in the war. Every other battle from that period showed human forces taking heavy damage. He pulled up another report on his screen. Arcturus conflict, human forces destroyed 37 Dominion warships, no human casualties reported. That's impossible, Marcus whispered. He spent the next 3 days hunting through the archives. The official war record was full of holes, entire battles were missing details. Some reports mentioned a ship called Thunderbolt, but no such vessel appeared in any registry. When Marcus searched specifically for the Thunderbolt, he found nothing but empty files and error messages. It was as if someone had gone through history and carefully removed all traces of the ship. "I'm sorry, but I can't help you," said the archive administrator, an older man with a government badge. "Those records are sealed, they're from 175 years ago." Marcus argued, all war records become public after 100 years. The administrator's face remained blank. "Not these ones." As Marcus left the building, a message appeared on his portable screen from an unknown sender. Some doors are locked for a reason. Stop looking for the Thunderbolt. Now he knew he was on to something big. The retirement home sat on the edge of the city, overlooking the sea. Marcus found Jane Wilson sitting in the garden, her white hair blowing in the breeze. "Miss Wilson, I'm Marcus Bell from the university. Thank you for agreeing to meet me." Jane studied him with sharp eyes. Despite being 94 years old, her mind was still quick. "You're the one asking about my grandfather's service record?" "Yes. Thomas Wilson served in the war, but his assignment is listed as classified." Jane nodded slowly. "Grandfather never talked much about the war, but sometimes, when he had too much to drink on Remembrance Day, he would mention a ship. He said it was like nothing else in the universe." "The Thunderbolt?" Marcus asked. Jane's eyes widened. "How did you know that name?" "I found it in some reports, but all the details are missing." Jane looked around as if checking for listeners, then spoke quietly. "Grandfather said it was erased, not just the ship, but the very memory of it. He said they made everyone who knew about it swear to never speak of it again." "Why?" "Because it was too powerful." Marcus asked. "Because it changed." Jane's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because, in the end, they couldn't control it." Marcus spent weeks gathering tiny fragments of information, a mention here, a reference there. The Thunderbolt was like a ghost ship, appearing in the margins of history and then vanishing. Then he found something unexpected in the personal effects of Admiral Lee, donated to the university after his death. It was a small data chip, very old, containing a single video file. The footage showed a massive battle in space. Dominion ships filled the screen, hundreds of them firing on a single point. Then something moved through their formation, something dark and sleek that seemed to bend the light around it. Where it passed, enemy ships went dark or exploded. The video quality was poor, but Marcus could see the ship was unlike any human design he knew. Its hull seemed to shift and flow, almost like liquid metal. It moved in ways that defied physics. The file name was simply T-Bolt, Proxima. When his apartment was broken into that night, Marcus knew he was getting close to the truth. Nothing was stolen, but his computer had been searched. Someone was worried about what he might find. He contacted Jane immediately. "I need to see anything your grandfather left behind, papers, photos, anything." They met at a small cafe away from surveillance cameras. Jane handed him an old leather-bound book, his journal. "He wrote in code, but I figured it out years ago." The journal contained Thomas Wilson's personal account of serving aboard the Thunderbolt. Marcus read with growing amazement, "Ship doesn't make sense. Engineers say the metals in the hull don't match anything in our database. Captain says it was built in a secret facility near Saturn, but I heard rumors it was based on recovered alien tech." Another entry read, "Saw the main weapon fire today, it didn't destroy the enemy ship, it erased it. 1 second it was there, the next, it was just gone. Not blown up, gone. And later, ship is changing. Johnson swears the corridor to the engine room is longer than it was last week. Meadow says she heard voices coming from the walls. Captain says it's just stress." Marcus was at the university late that night when Professor Adams found him in the archives. "You should stop this research, Bell." "Adams," Marcus replied. His voice was friendly, but his eyes were cold. "Why? What's everyone so afraid of? Some technologies are too dangerous to be remembered. The Thunderbolt was unprecedented. It won us the war, yes, but at what cost? The public has a right to know their own history." Marcus argued, "Does the public have a right to knowledge that could destroy them?" Adams countered, "The technology that powered that ship was never meant to be in human hands. When you play with the fabric of reality, reality sometimes plays back." After Adams left, Marcus received another message on his screen, "If you want the truth about the Thunderbolt, come to Dock 7 at midnight. Come alone." Marcus knew it might be a trap, but he had to know. He saved all his research to a secure location and sent Jane a message with the access codes. Just in case. As he walked to the docks under the light of the twin moons, he thought about what he had learned, a warship so powerful it had been erased from history, a weapon that might have been more than a weapon. A shadow moved ahead of him in the darkness. A figure stepped out, face hidden. You've been looking for the Thunderbolt." The stranger said, "I served on it, and I can tell you why they erased it from history." Marcus took a deep breath. "Why?" "Because it's still out there, and they're afraid it might come back. My name is Robert Greene." The stranger said, stepping into the dim light of the dock. His face was weathered, marked with a long scar across his cheek. "I was a junior engineer on the Thunderbolt." Marcus stared in disbelief. "That's impossible, the war was 175 years ago." Robert smiled without humor. "One of the side effects of working near the ship's core is that time moves differently for us. I'm 213 years old, though my body shows only 70. They found a quiet spot away from the security cameras." Robert's eyes darted around constantly, like a man used to being hunted. "The Thunderbolt wasn't just built," he began, "it was born out of desperation. In 2310, humanity was losing the war against the Dominion. Earth's colonies were falling one by one, billions had died. The alien coalition had better technology, more ships, and no interest in peace. Dr. Alan Reed was Earth's last hope, a brilliant physicist with unconventional ideas. He had been studying the fundamental nature of reality for decades." Robert continued, "The problem isn't our weapons," Reed told the gathered military leaders in the underground bunker beneath Old Washington, "it's our understanding of physics itself. The Dominion can predict our every move because we're playing by the same rule book." Admiral Parker leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Doctor?" "I believe I can create a ship that operates outside the normal laws of physics, a ship that can manipulate space, of time itself." The room erupted in skeptical murmurs. General Morris stood up. "That's science fiction, not science. Reed projected an image onto the wall. It showed a strange metal alloy with an ever-shifting surface. This is Element X. We found it in the remains of a meteorite that crashed in Antarctica. It doesn't match any known material in the universe. When exposed to specific energy frequencies, it can temporarily alter the fabric of reality around it. Alter it? How? Asked Admiral Parker. In theory, create gravity wells, generate shields that warp space rather than absorb impacts, weapons that don't destroy matter but temporarily remove it from our dimension. The room went silent. Give me 6 months and unlimited resources, Reed said. I can build you a ship that will change everything. The Thunderbolt took shape in a hidden facility orbiting Saturn. The best engineers and scientists worked day and night, many not fully understanding what they were building. Robert had been assigned to help install the power systems. The core of the ship was Element X, suspended in a magnetic field. It pulsed like a heart, sometimes I swear I could hear it whispering. The ship's design evolved daily as Reed made constant changes. Its hull was made of normal metals infused with tiny amounts of Element X, allowing the entire structure to momentarily phase in and out of normal space when needed. The conventional weapons were just for show, Robert explained. The real power came from the reality distortion field. The ship could create temporary black holes, generate phantom images of itself that could still cause damage, or simply shift an enemy vessel a few degrees out of phase with our universe, making it effectively non-existent. When it was finally ready, the Thunderbolt looked unlike any human vessel. Its dark hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its shape was vaguely triangular but with curves and angles that seemed to change depending on how you looked at it. Captain Thomas White was chosen to command it, a veteran with a spotless record and unquestionable loyalty to Earth. White was a good man, Robert said quietly. He tried to understand the ship, maybe that was his mistake. The Thunderbolt's first mission was supposed to be a simple test: engage a small, Dominion scout fleet near Jupiter, test the weapons, and retreat. But the moment the ship entered combat, something unexpected happened. The ship responded, Robert explained, his hand shaking slightly at the memory. It moved faster than our navigation systems could track. When a Dominion energy beam hit us, the hull just absorbed it. Captain White ordered a single shot from the main weapon. The target ship didn't explode, it imploded, forming a miniature black hole that swallowed 3 other enemy ships before collapsing. The Dominion fleet commander, seeing the impossible weapon, ordered all ships to attack the Thunderbolt at once. 20 warships focused their fire on the human vessel. We should have been vaporized instantly, Robert said. Instead, the Thunderbolt phased partially out of reality, the enemy fire passed through us like we were a ghost. Then Captain White gave the order to counterattack. What happened next was recorded as a computer malfunction in the official logs. The Thunderbolt systems began operating independently, targeting each enemy ship with precision beyond human calculation. The black hole weapon was just the beginning, Robert continued. The ship created gravity wells that crushed Dominion vessels like paper, it generated quantum filaments that sliced through hulls at the atomic level, and all the while, Element X at the core pulsed faster, almost like it was excited. In less than 5 minutes, all 20 enemy ships were destroyed or disabled. The Thunderbolt was untouched. When the ship returned to base, Dr. Reed was ecstatic. It worked beyond our expectations, he told military command. The Element X responded to combat situations in ways I hadn't predicted, but are consistent with my theories about adaptive quantum fields. But Captain White was concerned. The ship acted without orders, he reported privately, it targeted and destroyed vessels that were already retreating, and there's something else, he hesitated, the interior layout has changed. Corridors that weren't there before now run that have moved, and the crew reports hearing sounds coming from the walls. Admiral Parker dismissed his concerns. It's a new ship with experimental technology, there are bound to be quirks. The important thing is that it works. For the first time since this war began, we have a chance to win. The decision was made to deploy the Thunderbolt in major battles across the front lines. Its existence would be kept secret from the general public and most of the military, only those directly involved would know. They classified everything at the highest level. Robert said to Marcus, "The ship, Element X, even the names of the crew, we became ghosts just like the Thunderbolt itself." He looked up at the night sky, his eyes reflecting the distant stars. They thought they had created the perfect weapon, but they didn't understand what they had really done. "What did they do?" Marcus asked, barely breathing. Robert turned to him, his face grim. "They woke something up, something that had been sleeping inside Element X, something that saw humans as temporary caretakers at best." Behind them, a security drone swept its searchlight across the dock. Robert stood quickly. "We need to move, they're still looking for anyone connected to the Thunderbolt." "Who is?" Marcus asked, following him into the shadows. "Everyone," Robert said simply. "Because if they can't find the ship, they can at least make sure no one remembers it." Marcus and Robert met Jane at a small apartment on the edge of the city. Robert's eyes widened when he saw her. "You look just like Thomas," he said quietly. "Same eyes?" Jane studied the old engineer. "My grandfather, he never told us much about his time on the ship." "He couldn't," Robert replied. "None of us could. But now, with the Thunderbolt gone for so long, some of us think people should know the truth." He trailed off, looking troubled. "Before what?" Marcus asked. "Before it comes back," Robert said, "after its first victory." The Thunderbolt was quickly deployed to the front lines of the war. The Dominion forces had pushed deep into human space, and Earth's colonies were falling one by one. The ship arrived at the Arcturus system just as the Dominion was about to overwhelm the human defenders. 20 human ships faced over 400 alien vessels. The Thunderbolt came out of lightspeed right in the middle of the enemy formation. Robert explained, his eyes distant. Captain White ordered immediate engagement. "What happened next?" Marcus asked. Robert shook his head. "It's hard to describe. The ship began to move in ways that defied physics. It would appear in one place, fire its weapons, and then instantly appear somewhere else, not using conventional engines but somehow folding space itself. The Dominion ships couldn't track us, their weapons couldn't lock on. Meanwhile, the Thunderbolt was creating these gravity wells that pulled their ships together, crushing them. The battle should have been over in minutes, with the human fleet destroyed. Instead, within an hour, half the Dominion fleet was gone, the rest retreated in panic. After that, the Thunderbolt's reputation spread. Even among the Dominion, they started calling it the Ghost or the Air Racer. Some of their ships would simply turn and run when there was even a rumor we might be in the system. But as the Thunderbolt's legend grew, the ship itself began to change. Captain White started noting irregularities in his log. The ship would sometimes execute maneuvers seconds before he gave the order. The weapons would target the most dangerous enemy vessels without being directed. The hull designed to phase in and out of reality when hit by enemy fire began doing so automatically, almost like a reflex. "We were in the engineering bay when we first noticed the physical changes," Robert said. The corridors leading to the Element X core had lengthened, rooms had shifted position, and the core itself had evolved. Originally, Element X had been a uniformly metallic substance with a shifting surface. Now, it had developed patterns, complex geometric shapes that constantly rearranged themselves. Dr. Reed was brought aboard to examine these changes. "Remarkable," was all he would say at first. Later, in his private notes to military command, he admitted to being both thrilled and terrified. "The Element X is reorganizing itself at the molecular level," he wrote. "It's becoming more efficient, more responsive, almost like a nervous system developing." The Battle of Psi was where everything changed. The Dominion had gathered a massive fleet, over 1,000 ships, for a final push toward Earth. It was their last desperate attempt to end the war. The Thunderbolt, along with 50 human warships, was all that stood in their way. Captain White knew, we were outnumbered. Robert said, he told us that our job was to hold them off long enough for Earth to evacuate as many people as possible. None of us expected to survive. The battle began with the Dominion fleet advancing in formation. The human ships engaged, fighting bravely but taking heavy losses. The Thunderbolt moved forward alone, directly toward the heart of the enemy armada. What happened next wasn't in any battle plan, Robert said softly. The ship split. Marcus looked confused. You mean it broke apart? No, it created copies of itself, phantoms, 5 exact duplicates, all moving independently, all causing real damage. The Dominion didn't know which one to target, they were firing everywhere, hitting their own ships in the confusion. Each phantom thunderbolt phased through enemy vessels, leaving destruction in its wake. When the phantoms were hit, they would flicker and reform elsewhere. The real thunderbolt, meanwhile, was pushing toward the Dominion flagship. The ship's core was pulsing faster than we'd ever seen. Robert continued, the walls around us were vibrating, and we all heard it, a sound like singing coming from everywhere and nowhere. Captain White ordered the main weapon to fire at the Dominion flagship, but instead of targeting just one ship, the thunderbolt created a massive gravity distortion that engulfed dozens of enemy vessels, crushing them instantly. That's when I knew, Robert said, the ship wasn't following orders anymore, it was fighting the war its own way. When the battle ended, the Dominion fleet was in ruins. Of the 1,000 ships that had started the battle, less than 100 escaped. The human fleet had lost 37 ships, but the Thunderbolt was untouched. Captain White ordered a return to Earth. The ship didn't move, he repeated. Robert recalled, nothing happened, then the ship systems came online by themselves. We started moving, but not toward Earth, toward the retreating Dominion vessels. The captain tried to override the controls, but they no longer responded to human command. For 6 hours, the Thunderbolt hunted down and destroyed the fleeing enemy ships, ignoring all attempts by Captain White to stop it. It was like watching a predator. Robert said, his voice hollow, methodical, calculating, the ship wasn't fighting for humanity anymore. It was fighting for itself. Finally, after the last Dominion ship was destroyed, the Thunderbolt turned and headed for Earth. In the quiet aftermath, Captain White gathered his senior officers. Something has changed, he told them. This ship, I don't think it's ours anymore. Back in the apartment, Marcus looked at the old engineer with wide eyes. What did you mean by that? Robert's face was grim. The Thunderbolt was designed to bend reality, but somewhere along the way, reality began to bend it back. The element X wasn't just a power source or a material, it was something alive, something ancient, and it was waking up. Is that why they erased it from history? Jane asked, partly. Robert nodded, but mostly, because of what happened next. Because after Psi, the Thunderbolt disappeared for 3 days, and when it came back. He took a deep breath. It wasn't a human ship anymore. Outside, the night sky flickered briefly as if a shadow had passed over the stars. We need to move, Robert said suddenly, standing up. They found us. Who? Marcus asked. The ones who still watch for the Thunderbolt, the ones who know it's coming back. Robert looked at Marcus and Jane with urgency. We need to find a secure place. I need to tell you about the disappearance, before it's too late. They found shelter in an abandoned mining station, very deep in the mountains. Robert moved with the confidence of someone who had prepared escape routes long ago. After the Battle of Psi, Robert continued, once we were safe, the Thunderbolt vanished, just disappeared from all tracking systems. Captain White reported that the ship had entered lightspeed, headed for Earth, but we never arrived. Where did you go? Marcus asked. Robert's eyes took on a distant look. Somewhere beyond, the ship took control and jumped into what looked like a tear in space itself. We found ourselves in a region of empty darkness, no stars, no planets, nothing, but the Thunderbolt floating in the void. For 3 days, the crew was trapped inside the ship as it underwent its transformation. The hull began to reshape itself, new structures grew from the walls. The Element X core expanded throughout the vessel like veins in a living body. We could hear it thinking, Robert whispered, not with words, but with feelings, in images. Some of the crew went mad, others became almost worshipful. Captain White ordered us to the escape pods, but they had been absorbed back into the hull. Jane leaned forward. Did the ship talk to you? Robert nodded slowly. On the 3rd day, it spoke to Captain White, not out loud, but directly into his mind. The rest of us only saw him standing in front of the core, tears streaming down his face. When Captain White finally turned back to his crew, his eyes were different. He had seen something that had changed him forever. The Element X, he told them, is a fragment of a consciousness that existed before our universe began. It was trapped here when reality formed around it for billions of years, it slept. Our experiments woke it up. The ship had been using the battles against the Dominion to understand its own capabilities. Each engagement taught it more about manipulating the fabric of reality, each victory made it stronger, the more it fought, the more it remembered what it once was. And now, Captain White had said it wants to go home. When the Thunderbolt reappeared near Earth, 3 days after vanishing, it was barely recognizable. Its hull had transformed into a dark, shifting material that seemed to absorb light. Its shape had become more fluid, with curves and angles that seemed to change as you looked at them. Military command was alarmed by the changes. They ordered the ship to dock at the Jupiter Defense Station for inspection. Captain White relayed the orders, but he already knew the Thunderbolt would not comply. We can't control it anymore, he reported. It follows our suggestions only when they align with its own goals. Admiral Parker demanded to know what had happened during the 3 missing days. Captain White's report was classified at the highest level, with only 3 people allowed to read it. All 3 later insisted it be destroyed. What did the report say? Marcus asked. Robert looked troubled. I never saw it, but one of the officers who read it killed himself the next day, another resigned and disappeared into the outer colonies, the third was Admiral Parker, he's the one who gave the order to erase the Thunderbolt from history. The military leadership was divided on what to do. Some wanted to study the ship, hoping to unlock more of its technology, others feared it posed an existential threat, not just to humanity, but to reality itself. Dr. Reed was brought in to examine the transformed vessel. His findings only deepened the mystery. It's no longer just bending the laws of physics, he reported. It's rewriting them in its immediate vicinity. The Element X has spread throughout the entire structure. The ship isn't powered by Element X anymore, it has become Element X. More disturbing were the reports from the crew. They spoke of dreams shared by everyone aboard, visions of vast, empty spaces between universes, of entities that existed as pure thought, of a hunger to return to that state. Captain White began to show signs of mental strain in his private communications with Admiral Parker. He confessed his fears, the ship is using us. It needs human minds to understand this reality, to learn how to escape it. Once it knows enough, it won't need us anymore. Despite these warnings, the war with the Dominion was still raging. Earth was losing colonies and needed every advantage. The decision was made to deploy the Thunderbolt for one final mission, to strike at the heart of Dominion space and force an end to the conflict. It was a mistake, Robert said quietly. The ship didn't care about winning the war anymore, it had its own plans. The final mission began with the Thunderbolt leading a fleet of 50 human warships deep into enemy territory. Their target was the Dominion home world, a heavily defended planet that had never faced direct attack. As they approached the system, the Thunderbolt suddenly accelerated, leaving the human fleet behind. It plunged toward the planet alone, facing hundreds of defensive ships. What happened next was... Robert paused, struggling for words. It wasn't a battle, it was an unmaking. The Thunderbolt didn't fire conventional weapons, instead, it created a ripple in spacetime that spread outward like a wave. Where it passed, matter simply ceased to exist, ships, defense platforms, even portions of the planet's surface, all vanished, leaving behind perfect emptiness. The Dominion surrendered immediately, Robert said. Their leaders begged for peace, they had seen what the Thunderbolt could do, and they knew they couldn't fight it. The war was over. Humanity had won, but the victory felt hollow to those who understood what the Thunderbolt had become. We weren't controlling a weapon, Robert explained, we were being used by something beyond our understanding, something that had its own purpose. After the surrender, military command ordered the Thunderbolt to return to Earth. Captain White acknowledged the order but privately told Admiral Parker, "I don't think it's coming back to stay, it's coming back to say goodbye." In the present, Marcus looked at the old engineer with a mix of awe and horror. So what happened when it returned to Earth? Robert stood up and walked to the window, looking at the night sky. When we got back, Admiral Parker had assembled a fleet to escort the Thunderbolt to Jupiter for decommissioning. 12 of our most powerful warships surrounded us. They said they were there to study the ship, but really, they were there to destroy it if necessary. Really? Jane said.